So I just want to stipulate that the company is that handles these studies is referred to as BESA. And what BESA stands for is the International Association for Bioenergetic Systems Analysis, the IFV BESA. And it's really run by two seasoned and veteran clinicians in holistic practices who have just been spending decades of their career under the guise of biosystems analysis, which is also referred to in the industry as meridian stress assessments. Okay, now the two individuals are Wolfgang Hans Albright and Eva Kranke, and their clinic is located in Austria. Now, what they do is they provide services to a range of different industries and different technologies, from agriculture to technology to products and so forth, where they study the effects of these products and these practices that people want to have evaluated on what's the effect of people and animals as they're interacting with these products. And so that's why, just to give you some background, that's all these people do is they conduct studies. They've been doing it for decades, and they're very, very accomplished at doing what they do in terms of evaluating the health risks of all sorts of different things. And these folks have been doing this in Europe, and they're one of the most highly qualified clinics in Europe that conduct studies for anybody who wants to see the effects of what they do and their products and their practices, on humans and animals. Okay, now that what they actually use for their materials and methods of their studies is they refer to as, again, as bioenergetic systems analysis, which is I'm going to say a decavolt type of device, and I'll explain what that means, where it scans roughly around 60 points along the surface of the skin. So in other words, an individual or an animal, if they're testing against a product, in this case the product was an electric vehicle, then what the BESA will do is conduct multiple redundant studies, usually several studies across the row with different participants that they call proponents, I guess, or respondents or something. Sorry, I'll get into it. And then so they take these individuals, the test cases, and then they'll measure them before they're ever exposed to something. Then they'll measure as they're exposed, and then afterwards, and they measure 60 different points along the surface of the skin using their own proprietary analysis device. And what those measurements will do is analyze the effect of the thing, in this case again, it's an electric vehicle, on its effect on the energetic systems of the body as it relates to the condition of the lungs, the skin, intestines, connective tissue, stomach, nerves, organs, bladder, liver, abdomen, heart, etc. So there's all of these different things that they'll test for to see, what is the impact of this thing on the person or on the animal in all of these different categories here you see in the bottom of the slide. So the thing that's really important, though, if you've never heard about bioenergetic systems analysis, or if you've never heard about meridian stress assessments, I want to give you a little background about the science and the technology and the validation of this practice. Now, the idea was developed by a Dr. Reinhard Voll back in the 1940s. This was 80 years ago. And this doctor, he was a medical doctor at the time, and he became very dissatisfied with the diagnostics, methodologies that at the time in the 40s that the medical establishment had in terms of trying to diagnose any one of his patients as to what their problems were, so then he could then, of course, develop a treatment plan. That's your standard MO for any doctor, is that, they need to do a diagnostics, and then they need to figure out what's wrong with you, or usually they guess based on a bunch of test results, and then they come up with a treatment plan. And the unfortunate part in today's environment, in my opinion, is that, they have to guess at what would be the best treatment plan for what they think is wrong with you. And then you always get that speech right at the end of your doctor visit, which is, well, if nothing happens or it doesn't work, in a week, come back and see me. We'll reevaluate your dosage or your prescription. That whole thing about, let's try it for a week and find out, because they really don't know at the end of the day what is really, really, really wrong with you or, your condition. And then, of course, they're because of that, they're guessing at what's going to solve that problem. So now what Dr. Reinhard Voll spent decades doing was trying to figure out, okay, now how do I improve the process of diagnoses so that I can then really understand what the problem is so that I could then, develop treatment plans that would be appropriate for that problem. So then what he did is he went and started looking at traditional Chinese medicine. Because what he wanted to understand was, okay, what's a better way to diagnose instead of doing all these blood tests and all the stuff that they do, right? And then so what he discovered was if he applied the concept of traditional Chinese medicine, because for thousands of years now, right? I mean, this is what's really important. If you understand the general idea of healthcare, is that how long has the traditional medicine practices that we kind of are subjected to in our current society, which is American, the standard American care, American Medical Association. They develop a standard of care, and that's only been around maybe 100 years, right? It's only 100 years. But when you look at Chinese traditional medicine, that goes back thousands of years. So that's why he looked towards that, and then basically working with those practitioners at that time, and they're able because of their training and their experience, able to diagnose with quite incredible accuracy. So he figured out that the method that they were using was actually having the body tell you what's wrong with it, because the body can. And then he discovered that whereas a traditional acupuncturist can then, if you've ever been to one, they'll basically look at all these different things about you, but they're going to be putting their hands on you, and they're going to be with their hands. They're trained to basically feel the energy flow through your body through a system of your body's like a very complex, beautiful machine with tons of wiring in it, and it's energy, and that energy is flowing all through that wiring, and all those wiring of those energy, what they call meridians, they reach out to all the different organs and all the different parts of your body, and you are basically this really complex machine that's really wired, and everything's wired together. And if they put their hands on you, and they can sense how well that energy is flowing from point to point. And so what he did was he took basically being a westernized doctor, he decided, well, if is there a technology that could do that for people like himself and other doctors who aren't trained Chinese practitioners? And so then what he did was he developed a device that could then send a particular level of voltage and current, like we're talking microvolts, microamps, right? That this device will then basically transmit into the body, and then he would measure it at the 2 points, the beginning and the end of any one of those particular wiring points. Because now the wiring points are all meridians, and to kind of give you an example, there's here's the map of the body, and so you've got your meridians. Let's say here, I'm just going to give you the top one here, the stomach one. It starts up here in the forehead, and it comes all the way through the body, and it ends right here. And this is the thousands of years of Chinese traditional medicine has discovered how the body is wired. So he already had a blueprint. So then when he took the technology and he put like one probe up here and one probe down here, and then he would measure the current and the voltage going through the body through that one particular meridian, and based on the information he got back from the measurement of that, he would determine the actual condition of the stomach. And so and this is where he applied traditional, basically healthcare practices or diagnoses practices against, using this technique based on the Chinese traditional medicine. All right. So what he discovered, based on just decades of analysis and experimentation, was that when he would apply the current and voltage at one point of the meridian and then measure it coming out the other end of that meridian, right? If the voltage and the current remained the same, then he discovered that it meant that particular organ and that particular meridian was an optimal condition. That was a healthy person. And this is from measuring the both, right? He would basically measure using this this meridian stress assessment methodology, and then he would apply traditional diagnoses to it, and then he would compare the two. And over time, we're talking decades, he spent his career doing this and developing this. There's actually a device out there in the world you could buy called the DECA Vol device that actually is what he developed. And so it's still out there on the market, and tons of holistic folks use that in today's world. But there's other devices now beyond just his device, as shown here in this slide. BESA Institute developed their own Decavolt device. You'll find other Decavolt devices. One's called a Bioscan. So there's other devices out there that are now being used, and not just the one that he developed. But I digress. So going back to his actual results, where he would evaluate using the his basically his meridian stress assessment methodology. Then he would compare that to your standard diagnoses, where he would actually test, let's say this example, the stomach, all the different ways you would test the stomach, if you were just a regular doctor. And then he would match the two results, and the results over decades of time, he developed this device and this methodology. So at the end of the day, if the current coming in is the same as the current coming out, you're healthy. That part of your body is good to go, and you are in a good optimal state. Now, what he discovered was if he put that current and that voltage through a meridian to a specific, let's say a specific part of your body, spleen, gallbladder, heart, blood circulation, lung, all these different meridian points that tie to different organs. Now, if it came out and the voltage at the end of the meridian, he'd put it in on one end and he'd take a measurement on the other end. Now, if it came out and the actual voltage decreased, then when he would go in and actually do an analysis, a regular, doctor analysis, then he would discover that that particular part of the body was in a disease condition. It was actually damaged. It was diseased, right? And that's how he determined that, okay, if I see the voltage come out lower, then it's going to be where what I'm looking at is diseased, that it's definitely damaged and it's got a problem that needs to be treated. Now, the other end of the spectrum is if the voltage increased, so he put in a set amount of voltage and current at one point of the meridian, and he measured it at the other end of the meridian. If the voltage increased, then he discovered through all that study that then when he went in to look at that specific organ or that specific meridian area, then the condition of that organ was in a degenerative condition. And that's just the words he used. Degenerative means that it was stressed, inflammation, it was starting to show the signs of weakness. In other words, this was under a lot, that you're having a lot of problems with this thing. You've caught it before it got damaged. That's what's key here. You've caught the problem before it's damaged, and then he would develop a treatment plan for that. And so that's the actual way to do it. That's the scientific approach that he developed, called the Meridian Stress Assessment, using a Decavolt device, which then you look at the BESA Institute. They develop their own Decavolt device. They do the same types of measurement. They measure the meridian points. They evaluate the organs, and then they come out with a basically, well, they don't develop the treatment plans. They just would create the study that says, hey, this is what it's doing to the body. Okay, so they're doing the studies, but this is what it's based on. So when you see the results in the study I'm going to share with you, I wanted to let you know that's how you interpret the results. That this is a science that has been around for 80 years. Now, as to why the healthcare industry does not adopt this, I can't answer that. But I'll tell you what, that based on all of his work and all of the different doctors that have followed his work in the last 80 years, this methodology is spot on, and it marries directly to what the Chinese have been doing for thousands of years. So the device now, and when you look at the results of the study I'll be sharing in a second, they basically color coded it to make it way simpler to interpret. And so the 4 different color codes from the results that are coming from the analysis is going to be green, that basically shows that you're in optimal energy state, meaning that the current in and the current out is the same. You're healthy, it's good, you're good to go. Yellow is that it's inflamed, it's starting to go, but starting to get stressed out. The blue is degenerative. It actually means that you've got damage. You're being damaged. It's not just a little bit of inflammation and discomfort, that you've got some damage and that there's problems. It's it's very serious to understand that there's you're being damaged. And then the red, it comes out. It just shows as your total deregulation. So if you see red, that means bad. That means like, okay, you've got a chronic, serious problem with that area. Okay, so you can obviously you can realize, right? Damage does not mean damage does not mean you're, like severe, right? So it's just, that's the scale, right? It goes from perfectly healthy to being affected to blue being, hey, you're being damaged, you're flat out, being damaged, and then red means you are completely damaged at that point. So that's kind of how they did the scale.